started with a growl, but not from the dog. From behind the espresso machine came a sharp, guttural scoff. The cafe manager, short, balding, with a smug apron reading, "Veterans drink free," leaned on the counter and narrowed his eyes at the man and dog who'd just walked in. "You people think a service dog's a free meal ticket?" he barked, loud enough to bounce off the brick walls. The man stood still, one boot over the cafe's scuffed tile, the other on the welcome mat that read, "Support our troops." He wore worn-out combat boots and a faded jacket with the American flag stitched on the shoulder. His face was older than his body, creased, quiet. One hand rested on the harness of a black lab, whose vest read, "Service animal, do not pet." The cafe was called Brew Haven. Sat right outside Hensley Military Base. Looked like a tribute to Americana. Rusted metal signs, black and white photos of soldiers on the wall, jars of camo-wrapped coffee beans. But something about the room cracked when the manager sneered. "Again, I said he's not welcome here." The black lab tilted its head. The man didn't speak. He simply pulled out a worn leather wallet and held up a card. Department of Veterans Affairs. Next to it, a dog certification tag. The manager didn't even glance at it. "Fake heroes. PTSD circus act," he muttered, louder now, addressing the room more than the man. "I know you're kind. Want a discount? A thank you? Maybe a little applause?" The barista behind the counter, Kayla, early 20s, eyes wide, froze mid-foam. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone and hit record. The man's mouth twitched. Not anger, not shame, just restraint. He lowered the card without a word. The manager stepped closer. "You think just walking in here with a mutt gets you special treatment?" Someone gasped softly in the back. An elderly woman paused, typing on her laptop. A soldier in uniform halfway through a breakfast sandwich stopped chewing. The manager struck the man's hand. The ID card fell to the floor. "Out!" The dog growled once, low and short, but didn't move. Trained to protect. Trained to wait, the bitee. Man bent, picked up the card and turned to leave. 3 minutes later, the video hit TikTok. No hashtags, no voiceover, just raw footage. A man, a dog, a shove, a fall, and a line that pierced. "Get your PTSD parade out of here." 4 hours later, the video had 3.7 million views. Comments flooded in. "Is this real? That dog is more disciplined than the staff. He didn't even say a word." At 6:04 p.m., it happened. A low rumble rolled over the cafe parking lot. 6 green Humvees, matte paint gleaming like forest ghosts, turned off Hensley Drive and parked in perfect formation, no music, no words, just boots hitting gravel. Leading them, a tall man in full Marine Corps blues, chest adorned with medals, a silver bar catching the dying sunlight. Colonel Ezra Dalton. He walked past the confused onlookers and approached the man with the dog who stood calmly near the sidewalk. The colonel stopped, removed his cap. "You saved my life," he said. "Let's make this right." Then he turned to the cafe, voice cold and deliberate. "Remove the logo." The crowd blinked. The manager stepped out, face pale. You can't." The colonel didn't raise his voice. "You used the Corps' emblem to sell coffee. You dishonored it. You dishonored him." He pointed at the sign hanging above the cafe, a massive metal plate embossed with the Marine Corps logo. Then he snapped his fingers. A Marine stepped forward, wrench in hand. The manager screamed, "This is private property." The wrench bit. Metal screws cracked, and the logo came down. With a single clang on the concrete, the whole country heard it. Jacob Rowe hadn't spoken much since Kandahar, not since the explosion, not since the blinding light swallowed the desert road and the world twisted into fire and blood and screams, not since he crawled, bleeding, broken, burning 3 miles, through hostile sand to drag a man twice his rank to safety, dodging sniper fire with nothing but will and breath. Major Ezra Dalton had flatlined twice in the medevac. Jacob never mentioned that. Never mentioned the heat blistering his arms or the way Dalton gripped his shirt in panic, whispering his son's name like a lifeline. Back home, they offered Jacob medals, speeches, a folded flag for each of the men. Who didn't make it? He declined all of it. He took a dog instead. They named him Mace, black lab, soft eyes, combat-trained, emotionally keyed. Jacob didn't like the word therapy, said it like a punchline. But Mace? Mace understood the silence. Jacob settled in a town no one remembered, a trailer park behind a dried-out river. One road in, one road out. He didn't want parades. Just distance, just stillness. He woke at 4:30 a.m. every day, walked Mace before the sunrise. One hand on the harness, the other in his coat pocket where a worn patch rested. 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. Faded but intact. Locals knew him only as that quiet guy with the black dog. Some waved, most didn't. He preferred it that way. He'd pick up groceries at 9 a.m. sharp, took the far aisle to avoid crowds, ate dinner by 6, canned soup, eggs if it was a good day. He kept the TV off, news hurt. He never went to the VA center in town, not after they lost his file, twice. He didn't own a smartphone, no Facebook, no voice, but Mace. Mace knew when the tremors came, when the air felt too thin, when the flashbacks hit like shrapnel under his skin. Mace would press against him, firm and quiet, anchoring Jacob to now. There was one cafe he passed often, Brew Haven. Patriotic signs in the windows, Veterans Welcome printed in stencil font over the door. But something about the place always felt off. He never went in, until that day. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. He just wanted coffee. He'd finished a long walk with Mace, and the cold bit at his fingers. He'd run out of grounds at home, thought it's just a cup, in, out, no big deal. But the moment he stepped through that door, everything paused. His boots hit the floor and heads turned like radar. Someone coughed, the espresso machine hissed, and then, like a trigger being pulled, the manager spotted the dog. Jacob had the patch on his jacket, the official tag on Mace's vest, the laminated VA card in his hand. But none of that mattered. He'd seen it before, on the battlefield, in the barracks, in line at the pharmacy. That look, contempt masked as suspicion, pity hiding as patriotism. A young woman behind the counter, Kayla, froze with a half-poured macchiato, her lips parted, eyes darting between Jacob and the man in charge. Jacob didn't want to fight, just a coffee. He said nothing, just stepped forward, let Mace sit obediently beside him. And then came the shove, then the fall, then the words, "Get your PTSD circus somewhere else." That line didn't just echo through the cafe, it vibrated through every veteran who watched the clip later that day, through every silent survivor sitting in the dark with their own dog at their feet. Jacob left without a word. Kayla uploaded the video while still wearing her apron. The internet did the rest. But Jacob, he went home, poured water in an old tin cup, sat on the floor next to Mace, and stared out the window, not knowing that the man he'd once saved from death was already on his way, bringing a convoy with him. The sun hadn't even crested the hills when Kayla opened TikTok. Her video had 14,000 views overnight. By mid-morning, it passed 300,000. She'd captured everything: Jacob's stillness, the dog's quiet obedience, the slap of the ID card hitting, the tile floor, the manager's voice sharp and cruel. "Fake heroes don't get free coffee." The comments poured in like a tidal wave. "He's what real honor looks like." "That dog has more discipline than your manager." "Who treats a veteran like that?" By noon, it hit 1 million, and someone found his name, a blurry comment tucked in the swarm. "That's Jacob Rowe, 37. He saved my uncle in Kandahar, no joke." Reddit ran with it. A user posted a photo from 10 years ago, dusty, scanned, but unmistakable. A younger Jacob in full fatigues, arm around a soldier on a stretcher, blood on his sleeve. A chopper in the distance. Caption: Major Ezra Dalton, saved by Jacob Rowe. No medal, no parade. Suddenly the story wasn't just about cruelty, it was about silence. About what America forgot. About who we let disappear when the uniform comes off. But hours before that, inside Brew Haven, the tension was already thick. Jacob had walked in like anyone else, No flag waving, no dramatic entrance. Just a quiet man and a black lab padding beside him. Both calm, practiced, unseen. Kayla remembered the way he scanned the room before entering, how he kept to the side, shoulders angled away, one eye on the door. The habits of someone who's lived through ambushes. He waited in line. She made eye contact, and for a second, she thought he might smile. Then the manager saw the dog. "What is that?" he'd asked, mouth curled like he'd smelled something rotten. Jacob didn't speak, just showed the vest, the tag, the card. But the manager wasn't after facts. He wanted a scene. He started performing, for the customers, for himself. Raising his voice, accusing, assuming, waving his hand in disgust. Jacob barely moved, didn't flinch when called a fraud, didn't raise his voice when the manager shouted about scamming real veterans. He didn't even react when the card was slapped from his hand. Only Mace moved, sitting up straighter, a low warning growl vibrating in his chest. Kayla felt her pulse quicken. She reached for her phone without thinking, hit record, tilted it just enough to catch everything. She thought it might be for HR, maybe corporate, maybe someone higher up who could fix it quietly. She never expected it to go viral. She never expected that within hours, she'd be doxxed by trolls and praised by veterans. That Brewhaven's Yelp page would be flooded with 0-star reviews. That people would call from 5 states away just to say, "Tell him we're with him." Jacob had walked out without a word. She hadn't seen him since, but the world had. Justice for Jacob. To the hero, a silent valor, the hashtags ignited. Someone uploaded a 10-year-old local news clip of Dalton, fresh out of surgery, mumbling from a hospital bed. "I wouldn't be alive if not for Jacob Rowe. He's the reason I saw my son again." It was enough. That night, Kayla got a DM from a private account. Is it really him? The profile photo was cropped, but the medals gave it away. Colonel Dalton, she didn't answer. But the next morning, the convoy arrived. And Kayla? She stayed late that shift, sweeping floors that didn't need sweeping just so she could be there if he came back. She didn't know what Jacob would do next, but she knew the world was finally watching. And for once, silence wasn't just respected, it was heard. The moment the wrench hit metal, the country exhaled. But for Jacob, the noise was only the beginning. He hadn't expected the world to react. Certainly not like this. Not with hashtags and military threads and teary testimonials stitched into a viral storm. He hadn't wanted it. The point was never revenge, never attention. He just wanted coffee. But now faces were turned toward him, millions of them. And silence, his armor for years, was no longer enough. Within 24 hours, cable news anchors stumbled through his name like it was holy scripture. Jacob Rowe, former Marine. Decorated, but silent. Saved Colonel Dalton in a classified, and never spoke about it. One station even flew a drone over his trailer park, blurring his address but not the face of the man sitting on the porch, stroking his black lab in the morning sun. He looked like a statue, the kind carved for war memorials, still, untouchable, burdened. Kayla tried messaging him, no answer. Veterans began showing up outside Brewhaven, quietly laying down challenge coins on the sidewalk. Some saluted the door. Some just stood there, saying nothing, because they understood the weight of a voice withheld. Reddit threads chronicled everything. The unit Jacob served in, the names of the men lost that day, the reports of him refusing commendation. And then came the letters. Hundreds, scanned and shared across the internet like relics. Mr. Rowe, I watched your silence and felt braver about my own. Because of you, I finally took my dog into the grocery store. Thank you. My dad never talks about Iraq, but after watching that video, he sat me down and said, I was that man once. But not all responses were kind. Trolls flooded. Comment sections. He just stood there, didn't even say thank you. Probably staged for clout. It's just coffee, grow up. Some shouted for boycotts. Others demanded he speak up, do interviews, go on talk shows. One morning, a reporter in sunglasses tried ambushing him at the gas station. "Mr. Rowe, is it true you dragged a colonel through sniper fire?" Jacob simply stared, his hand on Mace's head, then turned and walked away. And still, the eyes followed him, a weight he never asked for. A burden heavier than body armor. Colonel Dalton tried calling, twice, left a voicemail Jacob didn't check. But the third time, he didn't call. He arrived, in uniform again, alone, no convoy. He waited outside Jacob's fence, didn't speak, didn't knock. Mace noticed first, ears perked. Low whine, Jacob opened the door and froze. Dalton didn't salute this time, just nodded. "Son," he said, voice like gravel. "You don't owe me a thing, but I owed you this." The truth out loud. He looked down, then back up. "Your silence gave me 20 years I didn't deserve. I'm sorry it took TikTok to give you 5 minutes." Jacob didn't respond, he didn't need to. The wind moved between them, leaves rustled. Mace sat between the two men, calm, aware. And something passed in that silence, something heavier than words. That night, Jacob didn't sleep. He sat on the porch under the stars, scrolling through Kayla's podcast idea. Pause and purpose. A space for veterans, for their dogs, for their stories. She had invited him, twice. He didn't reply, but he bookmarked the page. Maybe silence wasn't the destination. Maybe it was just the road back. 6:04 p.m. The air outside Brewhaven shifted. Traffic froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The usual chime of the cafe door, the hiss of steamed milk, gone. Only the deep bone-shaking thrum of diesel engines announced their arrival. 6. Marine Corps Humvees, green and gleaming, pulled into the parking lot in a single synchronized line. No license plates, no insignia, just presence. Every phone in the vicinity lifted skyward. From the lead vehicle stepped Colonel Ezra Dalton, full-dress blues, rows of ribbons across his chest, polished shoes striking pavement like the opening beat of a funeral drum. Behind him, Marines exited the other Humvees in complete silence, boots landing in unison. No one spoke. Kayla stepped out from behind the counter, still wearing her apron. Her heart thundered as she realized what was happening. Jacob wasn't there, yet, but his story was. Dalton scanned the crowd. Dozens now gathered on the sidewalk, cameras ready, whispers thick in the air. And then he spoke, not to the crowd, to the building, to the owner of this establishment, he said, voice projecting without force. "You've used the Marine Corps' insignia to sell coffee, to decorate your windows, to draw in soldiers, and then you use that platform to mock one of our own." The manager stood frozen in the doorway, face flushed, one hand still gripping a to-go cup like it was a lifeline. "You dishonored the emblem," Dalton continued. "You dishonored him." He stepped aside and pointed upward. Every eye turned to the oversized metal plate hanging above the door. The Marine Corps eagle, globe, and anchor, etched into brushed aluminum. Dalton raised a hand. One of the Marines stepped forward with a tool bag. The manager finally found his voice. "You can't just... This is my property." Dalton didn't even blink. "That emblem is our property. You displayed it without authorization. And worse, you desecrated what it stands for." The Marine unzipped the bag, pulled out a wrench and climbed onto the ladder. The sound of metal grinding against screws echoed across the street. Every camera caught it. The first screw hit the pavement. Clink. The manager shouted, "I'm a patriot. I donate to veterans groups. I fly the flag." Dalton turned to him slowly, eyes like a drawn blade. "A flag is not a shield for cruelty," he said. "And patriotism without respect is just performance." Another screw dropped. Kayla covered her mouth. The moment hung taut and electric, until the final screw gave way. The sign dropped, hit the concrete with a sharp final clang that echoed like a rifle shot. Gasps. Someone cried out. A woman near the edge of the crowd began to sob softly. Then, across the parking lot, footsteps. Jacob. He Walked slowly, shoulders straight, mace at his side. No rush, no drama, just presence. The crowd parted for him like water. Dalton turned first, saluted. This time, Jacob raised his hand in return. Then he walked past the colonel, directly to the manager. Everyone tensed. Jacob bent down, picked up the fallen Marine Corps sign with both hands, walked it over, held it out. The manager reached for it, confused. Jacob let it go, and it clattered to the man's feet. Then he spoke. 3 words. Not loud, not angry, just deliberate. Earn it back. The crowd exploded. Cheers, shouts, a chorus of emotion crashing into the scene like thunder. Someone live streaming dropped their phone and started crying. Dalton stepped beside Jacob, leaned slightly. I should have done this years ago. Jacob nodded but said nothing. He didn't need to. The Marine emblem lay at the manager's feet, scuffed, dented, stripped of place but not of meaning. Kayla came forward, eyes red. She offered Jacob a fresh cup of coffee, hands shaking, on now. The house, she whispered. He nodded once, then turned to the gathered Marines. They didn't salute again. They didn't have to. Their silence was louder than any national anthem. Across town, phones buzzed, screens lit up. The live stream topped 4 million viewers in under 30 minutes. Veterans everywhere watched through tears. Teenagers reposted clips, adding captions like, "This is what honor looks like. My grandpa served, he never talked. Now I get it. We don't deserve men like this." Inside Brewhaven, the sign's removal left a ghost-shaped shadow on the brick wall. Void and maybe a beginning. By morning, Brewhaven was boarded up. No notice, no press release, just darkened windows, a padlock on the door, and a silence that weighed more than the metal sign now gathering dust in the back room. But the world wasn't done speaking. Letters started pouring in, not emails, real letters. Handwritten, postmarked from across the country, some stained with coffee rings, others folded like prayers. They arrived at City Hall, at the post office near the base, and eventually, in a torn manila envelope that Kayla left on Jacob's porch. He didn't open them at first, but Mace nudged one loose with his nose, and Jacob, almost absent-mindedly, "To me, dear Mr. Rowe, my brother was like you. Never said much. Your video made my dad cry for the first time in a decade. Thank you." And they're read. "I tried to take my own life last year. Your silence, your dignity, gave me a reason to speak to someone. They came from widows, from children of veterans, from Marines who hadn't seen combat in 20 years but still flinched when a car backfired. One, signed only with a single initial, said, 'You reminded us that real strength isn't loud.' Dalton sent one too, typed but signed in ink. 'Jacob, I wake up every morning because you didn't stop crawling. I speak to my son because you didn't give up. You didn't just save me. You reminded me what the uniform meant, forgive.' The silence. I carried it too long." Jacob sat on the porch, letter in one hand, Mace's leash in the other. He didn't smile, didn't cry, just breathed. Kayla stopped by one evening with 2 coffees and a USB stick. "You don't have to talk," she said, setting it on his railing. "But if you ever want to tell your story, this podcast doesn't exist without you." She left the second cup beside him. No sugar, just black. Just like he liked it. He didn't say thank you, she didn't expect him to. A few days later, outside the shuttered café, someone hung a laminated note on the tree where the Marine sign used to be. No name, no author, but the message was loud. "To the man they tried to erase, you walked in alone, but you stood for thousands. You were mocked for your silence, and turned it into a roar. Some men fight wars, some men survive them. You did both." It was Kayla's voice that started the first episode. Welcome to Pause and Purpose, where silence becomes a story, and every dog has a name worth remembering. No ads, no sponsors. Just her, a cracked mic, and an empty chair across from her. She didn't expect Jacob to show up. She'd sent the invite weeks ago. No reply. No RSVP. She left the door unlocked just in case. The podcast was supposed to be a tribute, a space for voices like his, even if his never filled it. But on the third recording, at 6:43 p.m., the door creaked. She looked up. Jacob stood. There. Same boots, same jacket, mace by his side. He didn't speak. Just took the seat, placed a folded paper on the table and slid it toward her. On it were names. 8 of them. His old unit. Kayla hit record. The episode began with silence. 3 full seconds of it. Heavy, deliberate. Then, "My name's Jacob Rowe," he said, voice gravel-worn and careful. "And I don't talk much. A beat. But I'm here because others can't." He told one story, just one, about a man named Ruiz who taught him how to tie a proper sling with one arm, about a laugh that never matched the battlefield, about a photo he still carried in his coat, 3 men grinning in a sandstorm. He didn't cry, he didn't linger. He spoke like someone walking barefoot through broken glass. Not fast, not afraid, just knowing exactly where each sharp edge lived. That episode went viral in 2 days. Jacob refused money, refused merchandise. Instead, he asked Kayla to redirect all donations to a new nonprofit, Mace House, a veteran dog training and support center. They leased the old laundromat next to the high school. Within weeks, there were lines. Veterans signed up not just for dogs, but for silence, for peace, for community. Jacob never claimed ownership. He swept floors, fed dogs, sat quietly with those who didn't know how to start talking yet. One day, a 5th grader stood in front of a school assembly and introduced him. "This is Mr. Rowe. He saved a colonel. He saved a café. He saved a lot of dogs. And he listens. Really good." The crowd clapped. Jacob lowered his eyes. Mace barked once, soft and proud. It wasn't applause Jacob craved. It was resonance. And now, finally, his silence had found its song. The bench outside Mace House faced east, where the morning light cracked gently through a line of sycamore trees. Jacob sat there most mornings, coffee in hand, Mace at his feet, the world slowly remembering how to breathe. He didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't seek out crowds, but people came anyway, veterans, widows, teenagers who'd never worn a uniform but carried invisible battles on their backs. They sat beside him, sometimes in silence, sometimes just long enough to say thank you and mean it. One morning, a young vet, barely 22, hands shaking, approached with a rescued shepherd on a leash. "He's nervous around strangers," the vet said. "Don't think I'm doing it right." Jacob gave a small nod. Mace stood and patted over to the shepherd, nose to nose. No barking, no growling. Just a slow, patient sniff and stillness. The shepherd sat down. The vet blinked. His breath caught. Jacob smiled, just barely. "You're doing fine," he said, that was all. Across town, Brewhaven reopened under new ownership. Different name, different mission. A small plaque hung above the doorway now, in honor of those who spoke without words and changed everything. They never painted over the shadow of the old Marine Corps sign, left it like a scar, a reminder. One evening, Kayla dropped by the bench. "Guess what?" She grinned. "You're the top requested guest for the Veterans Ball next month." Jacob raised an eyebrow, sipped his coffee, said nothing. She laughed. "Thought so." Before she left, she hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret walking into that cafe?" Jacob looked down at Mace, who looked up at him like he already knew the answer. Jacob shook his head. "No," he said. "It's where everything finally started." As the sun dipped, painting the sky in hues of fire and honey, a little boy walked past holding his father's hand. He looked at Jacob, saluted, then whispered, "That's the man who made the colonel cry." Jacob didn't respond, just nodded once, and for the first time in years, he felt whole. Not because he was seen, but because someone else now carried the light forward, quietly, strongly like him. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded. Sometimes the quietest voices leave the loudest echoes.